and that is Jeff Kostuik. He's the general manager of Verve Seeds, and I'm sure he'll talk about some of the other ventures that he's working on as well. But Jeff's career path has naturally evolved from the love of agriculture and the family farm, like many people in the agri-food industry. Called upon for his knowledge gained from the farm, along with a high research background in the hemp industry. Jeff has an innate ability of relating to producers, colleagues, and processors, and I recently had the pleasure of joining Jeff in a hemp field outside Carmen a couple weeks ago, and there was a processor there that had come in from California, and so he was growing hemp, baby hemp essentially, harvesting it, and then it was going into lettuce greens. Being packaged like clamshells in the United States. So really neat when the two ends of the value chain come together that closely. Jeff is known for his real-life experience in the field, equally renowned as having a strong applied research background, providing benchmarks in the hemp industry. A long career he's been doing that, Jeff, which has assisted in the success of producers and colleagues in the burgeoning hemp industry. Jeff is passionate about hemp and the opportunities that are available, whether it be through the use of fiber, grain, or as a nutraceutical. So let's welcome Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I think I can see the button. Which one did you say it was? Was this not the green one?
The one with the triangle on it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much, Robert. Yeah, got the technical difficulties worked out. As mentioned, my name is Jeff Kostuik. I work for a company called Verve Seed Solutions, which is a fairly new company. We were just formed in February of this year. Previous to that, the company that I was working for was called Hemp Genetics International, which the name kind of says it all. It's primarily what our business is providing genetics for the industry within Canada. Hemp was reintroduced in Canada in 1998. I'll kind of take you through a little bit of a history of hemp, and my presentation is going to be a little bit more, I think it's going to be different because it's going to take you to the farm. The 2% disconnect, I'm going to be that drunk uncle at the Christmas table to be bugging you about hemp and its benefits, and it's not only its benefits, but also some of the problems and issues that we have with the crop from the producer level. So first of all, so HDI again was the company that I worked for, and I'm also associated with Hemp Production Services, which has now changed their name to HPS Food and Ingredients, and I'll explain why a little bit. For one thing, anything labeled hemp, when you're looking at either financing or promotion in the US is basically flagged. So we really had to take a look at when we were doing our marketing with 6P and our brand establishment, the name change that we went to Verve that is sort of non-hemp related. There's obviously I feel a certain sex appeal about hemp. There is a sort of that bad boy maybe or stigma at the same time. But when you're doing business and you want to be talking to the Cargills of the world, to the General Mills, etc., there's a lot of cautionary pushback, I guess, right now. Still in the hemp industry. In Canada, we call it the giggle factor. We've surpassed that, right? Since 1998, I remember going to the first food shows or ag shows. Farmers would kind of just congregate in front of the table, and then they push the youngest back up and say, well, if I smoked a bale, I got high, and everyone would laugh. And then, no, actually, you could smoke this whole roomful, you're not going to get high, there's no THC, and then you get into the nutritional benefits of hemp. So that's how it was kind of built upon, and now, we'll go to Ag Days or a crop production show in Saskatoon, and can I apply a second bout of nitrogen perhaps in crop? What herbicides can I use? What can I not use? On the organic situation, what's a good crop to go in front of hemp? So we've really come a long way, baby, as I say, but there's a long way to go. So really, the products that we do with HPS are cold pressed hemp oil, which is getting really confused in the US since the CBD craze. For those that don't know what CBD is, it's cannabidiol. In Canada, You can buy cannabidiol in at the dispensaries, essentially, equivalent to THC. There's no psychoactive effect with CAMA CBD, but in our government and its wisdom, that's where it was established to start with. But anyway, there's a big kind of, what used to be a real line in the sand between marijuana and hemp that we tried to draw, it's kind of getting a little blurry. So anyway, cold pressed hemp oil as a culinary oil. Dehulled hemp, which is hemp hearts. I'm sure most of you have seen that in the grocery store, and then the protein powder. And it's the protein that I want to, I guess, base my conversation with you guys today about, and what our opportunity that we see in this industry and beyond meat. So growing hemp, and I threw in crops successfully. This is just a take-home message for all farmers. What is the market demanding? And that's what we're here to discuss today. With our recent merger, we're going through a major market strategy sessions right now, trying to figure out, what is the opportunity with protein and for Beyond Meat burgers or Impossible burgers or plant-based diets. And then, of course, how can you supply quality hemp to the farm at the farm level? So everything starts at the farm level, and you've got to make sure that we can't turn something bad into something good through a process. So it's a systematic approach. And again, that's sort of, with my farmer-only presentation. So why hemp grain? And again, we take a look at the middle box of protein of 23 to 25% protein. The protein value on hemp seed is, the price for the protein on hemp is I wouldn't say substantially higher, but it's significantly higher than other proteins, other crop proteins. It is a more complete food, and so there is a need to sort of increase, the value of it. And I'm going to go through some slides on what farmers have to do to produce the crop. And so to entice farmers to grow hemp, we have to provide them with a little bit more of a carrot at the end of the day. But it's a very complete food. They say hemp oil is essentially the same as fish oil, but without the gills. So very nutritional and quite good for us. The dehulling, or the process and the flow chart, so just to give you an idea too on what the process is, and it's a little bit unique in the fact that we are providing a raw product to our consumers. And so it's extremely important for us to make sure that our QA program is intact and in place. So the farmer grows the hemp seed, he puts it into his bin. From that place, it goes to a seed cleaner who cleans all the weed seeds out, etc. From the seed cleaner, it comes into our dehulling facility, which is actually in Manitoba. So Manitoba currently is still probably the largest hemp food processing region in probably the world, I would think. With Manitoba Harvest, there's HPS and Hemp Oil Canada, which are kind of business Manitoba Harvest, but all joined. So at that point, that product is dehulled. We tested at that point in time for THC and other contaminants. And then it goes into a package, and then from that right onto the consumer's plate. So there's no kill stop, no heat added. So it is sort of that raw food that is attractive, again, to that generation that we've been just previously talking about. And the same goes for the oil. So it's really an unadulterated food product that comes onto the consumer plate. But with that comes issues that we have to make sure that any of these microbial limits are not met. And there is no national limits that we have to follow. This was just produced by the industry itself. Manitoba Harvest in particular went through a lot of this. So peroxide value generally means what the shelf life is. So that's used for determining how the product was handled at the farm, what the shelf life is going to be for that product. And then all of the really bad names of total coliforms, E. coli, salmonella, all of those things are real. They can happen within a bin, within a farmer's field, and we have to make sure that we educate those farmers so that we have a safe food product. One of the big issues, and it's kind of an issue where each of the different crops, so where we want to grow protein doesn't always necessarily just fit into the cube, right? So the area around Winnipeg, the Red River Clays, it's very tough to grow hemp when you get a 3-inch rain and you have zero hills, so I'm thinking, topography where the water goes across the whole quarter section, because it does not like its feet wet. And so what we need to do is grow it on soils that are more conducive for it to do well. One thing that is also a bit of a hang-up, I guess, in the hemp industry is that farmers can only grow varieties that are on the Health Canada list of food cultivars. And so there's a process where we have to prove to Health Canada that there is basically zero chance or less than 0.3% THC within that variety. So a farmer goes on to, he has to buy certified seed, because that is another way that we can kind of control the product and how well it does. But he has to go to that list. So there's all of these little things that are kind of leading up to why I think hemp demands a little bit more value. Fertility is a very important one, and it's kind of going to tie into the second part of the presentation of the different crops that we're looking at. So hemp, if you go to the University of Google hemp, you're going to find all kinds of things. There's a lot of good information on there, but there is certainly a lot of misinformation. And some of the early information was that if I threw hemp on the carpet, put a little bit of water there, that hemp will grow. And hemp will grow on any soil, hemp will improve your soil, which it will, but there's claims of it putting nitrogen back into your soil. This is a trial that we did a few years back, showing the exact opposite as far as how much nitrogen is needed to grow the crop. So similar to, in comparison to canola, that needs, for the total plant, it'll consume up to 120 pounds of nitrogen or kilograms per hectare, which is resource the same. Whereas hemp will take up to 200 pounds of nitrogen. It's an important aspect to know as the government is moving forward and limiting our nitrogen resources, and it's coming under fire, I guess. So to grow a good and healthy crop of hemp that outcompetes weeds that we don't want to use herbicides on, we need that source of nitrogen to make sure that it can compete with those weeds. And we need to use traditional equipment. So I farm with my brother-in-law and Russell. We farm about 8,000 acres there. This is our seed drill. So to grow hemp, we don't have planters. We're not planting soybeans on rows or anything. We have to be able to use our conventional equipment without going into a huge investment. So again, any of these new crops that come in that are going to address these markets, there has to be an adaptation that's readily available for our prairie farms. So here we're putting on our nitrogen at the same time. We're able to variable rate our fertility, so we're very conscious of where we're putting that nitrogen to. And by variable rate, I mean we will take soil tests to the entire field and have different zones. Each zone has its own fertility requirement. So if it's a poor area of the field that has perhaps salinity, which is a salt issue, we're not going to put more fertilizer there because that's just adding to the problem. So this is some of the technology that farmers have adopted now so that we could actually produce food at a more efficient manner and more cost effective. This is one of the bigger issues with hemp and why we need to educate farmers is the wrapping effect. And I often say that hemp, one of the best things about hemp is it's the strongest naturally occurring fiber out there as a plant. The shittiest thing about hemp is it's the strongest naturally occurring fiber, because this is what will happen. It just seems to wrap on everything, and you spend more time worried about where it's wrapping, whether your combine's going to start on fire, and less time about your food quality. So these are the things that did happen, but with farmers' ingenuity, it doesn't take much. With some duct tape, red, green, and some PVC pipe, and the problem was solved. So we've been able to advance, I guess, and this is the sort of information that we'll pass on. But each one of these things, I guess, puts hemp in the light, and it was just a cool picture that I thought, this is my picture from in the combine, and I kind of related to perhaps we're in the tunnel and we're seeing the light as hemp is sort of becoming more accepted, and hoping the hell that's not the train that's coming at us, which tends to be. And I mean, the marketing and the Beyond Meat and everything, these are all sort of trains that continue to sort of have an effect on how this crop is developed. So in thinking about that, we decided we need to pivot. So whoever saw the Friends episode, it's quite hilarious. It was something that we needed to do. And so in doing so, we're taking a look at another crop called faba bean. And back in my early days, as Robert said, as far as a crop diversification specialist and working with different crops in Manitoba, this is one crop that had very little breeding work done to it. It was an interesting crop. It's the highest nitrogen accumulator in a field, meaning that it will accumulate nitrogen in your field. It will actually do that. So it takes atmospheric nitrogen through a process, and it goes into the root system, supplies nitrogen for itself, and then residual nitrogen for your crop next year. So it's very beneficial to grow as a crop. But the product itself was difficult to work with. The first faba beans, or broad beans they were called, in the early 90s were the size of my thumb. And if I hit it with a hammer and got twice that size, there are some faba beans were that size. Very difficult to run that seed through that air seeder that I had a picture of because of the plug hoses. There was just no real breeding work. There's a thing called tannin, which we all know that wine has tannin. For animal feed, hogs would not like tannin. They would eat it for the first little while, and then they'd go off feed because they didn't like that tannin. The second issue, as far as human consumption, was a thing called visine and convisine. And similar to gluten intolerance in people, visine causes favism, which is primarily in the Mediterranean where more faba beans are consumed, but people would get ill from eating faba beans. So the breeding community has now taken out that tannin, it's taken out the convisine and visine. It retains the benefits of putting nitrogen back into the soil. And it's really adapting this crop. It's redesigning the crop to fit area agriculture. This is a look at nitrogen costs since January 16th, and we're into January 22nd. So you can see that it's about tripled in price for the cost of nitrogen. And when you take a look at the price, the selling feature that I guess that faba beans has is, why not grow a crop that'll leave 60 to 80 pounds of residual nitrogen in your field so that you don't have to pay for this. Again, the government is going to be coming down, limiting the nitrogen that we can put on the field, and hemp loves that nitrogen. So as a crop rotation, it's really quite a good story to tell. Two plant-based proteins. As far as the nutritional aspect, so basically, as mentioned, the development of low visine in the top right-hand corner, crop fixes nitrogen, so all the points that I've kind of talked about. And we have now, I think, some of the largest plant processing in Manitoba again. So we're Roquette outside, Merit Foods, and HPS Foods is doing hemp and Manitoba Harvest. So we're situated in the province, I think, very well for adaptation for some of these additional crops. This is just a picture of the faba bean size that I was talking about, the variability. So A is what we're after. So if we can create a faba bean that is smaller in size, similar to a pea or a soybean, the farmer acceptance is going to be much larger. They're going to want to be able to grow that. It lowers their seeding rates, lowers the seed cost. It's just much more advantageous. And when you look at, again, nitrogen fixation as mentioned, you see faba bean in the middle. Percent NDFA is the percent of nitrogen that plant will extract from the atmosphere. So 60 pounds of nitrogen that it basically uses for itself, and then that residual is left in the field. So now, just on to, again, our strategic plan, and it was actually quite timely that this has all happened because I was kind of doing this research for our marketing, strategic planning, and this just comes from the Financial Times, I believe, yeah. Inflation kills off hopes for return to plant-based meat food. Basically what they're saying is that these Generation Z, like right now, I'm just going to move this slide here, the inflation and recession that we are potentially in has forced a lot of those people to go back to realizing that the total conventional meat market, if they're going to pay $4.56 for a pound of ground beef and $8.28 for an equivalent in a Beyond Meat package, when things get tough, people go back to what they can afford and what they are used to. So we feel that this 2.4% inflation in plant-based meats is something to be aware of. The question that we had at the table is, will cows ever be completely extinct from the farmyard? And that question is, would Russia ever invade Ukraine? I think it's the same thing. You didn't think of that, but sure as hell it happened, and so that's caused that 2.4% inflation. So we're at a time, I guess, in the world where we're questioning science, we're questioning the media, we're questioning just about everything these days, and anything is possible. So I think the moral of the story is that we need to remain nimble, we need to be able to pivot, and keeping the farmer in mind is how he's going to adapt to that. And I know Corey's probably going to speak more to the farm itself, so hopefully I didn't steal a lot of that thunder, but anyway, that's kind of my message is that it forced us into a situation where, we saw that growth as far as 30%, 40% a year on plant-based meats change rapidly, so we need to change our approaches. With that, I'll leave it, and if there's any questions, be happy to answer.
Any questions in the audience? Let me know if you had a follow number two. Just to start us off, so you mentioned, Jeff, a lot of the plant protein processors being in this province, including foods. Ignorantly, I don't believe they are using hemp as a possible product in their ingredients, their formulations. And why is that? And when do you see that happening? That he's going to let hemp, fava beans will be part of their mix.
There is to a certain extent, but it's not as extensive as we were really hoped. So Nestle does have a fava hemp burger, actually. It is out. I think there's still a stigma, to be quite honest, that we find. And again, I do a lot of traveling into the US. It's a huge opportunity for the market for us. And then, as I mentioned, where we've got past the giggle factor, it's still very prominent in the US, where I traveled with my carry-on says eat more hemp on it. It's a promotional thing, and I get the stewardesses said, I'd love to try hemp, but we get tested every week. And I said, well, it doesn't really matter. You're not going to get high from eating hemp. So there's still that education, consumer awareness that we need to get across. And I think, going to a lot of these meetings in the US, they're saying, how much money should we invest in processing? The government's essentially, we need to have the process. Well, the processing will come if there's a pull. But what we need is the education to General Mills. We need the education to Cargill to say, this is a safe food product. It's very nutritious. You're not going to get high, and just move forward with it. And in Canada, we've been trying to do that for many years. And as I mentioned, with the CBD kind of coming onto the forefront now, that's kind of blurred that line a little. So I think we took 100 steps forward and maybe 10 steps back at this point in time. But in my opinion, it's really the stigma of that we need something further than having a consumer have to go to the fridge or go to pick up those hemp hearts to sprinkle them on their Cheerios for their yogurt in the morning. It has to be incorporated in there for them. We're talking about, recycling and how beneficial. We all know it's beneficial, but it has to be extremely convenient for us to do it, right? So all of these things, when we're looking at it, it has to have that convenience.
I mentioned in your introduction about the processor from California who was putting baby hemp into a salad mix. So do you anecdotally have any comments or experiences as it relates to among dishing a salad, and there's this hemp-shaped leafy green in your clamshell?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to disrupt the industry, what better way than actually having a leaf in bag salad? And I applaud them. They're in the final process of getting GRAS status for the product, which I don't even know how that's going to work in Canada right now, to be quite honest. But if it has GRAS status, it has GRAS status. So the USDA has been out to their farm. 20 USDA agents came out. Essentially, they're growing it in rotation with their lettuce. So during the summer months, they grow it in San Joaquin Valley, and then they move to Yuma after, planting it in beds. This will be about 4 or 5 inches tall. They're going to be putting it into bag salads, bunched herb, dried herb, and then microgreens. So one of the comments, and this is just typical of what I was talking about earlier, is the USDA agent said, "Wow, I thought it would taste a lot more like college," meaning it would be skunky or what have you. But we're finding it within the varieties. There's pepperness. There's a lot of different qualities, and now we're looking at even different colors within hemp too. So it's pretty exciting, and I think that will be a big door opening for us as it gets grass status.
You gave a lot of reasons why Corey, our grain farmer, should not grow hemp.
Yeah.
It's gonna mess up his combine. What is your elevator pitch to farmers in North America?
Thank you very much. That's a good point, and I should end on a positive note. So I just harvested my hemp crop last week, and I grew it on Verve stuff. So I'm growing seed for our company and also, but it was the second highest yield on our farm for a record. Traditionally, 1,000 pounds per acre is a normal yield for hemp, and I pulled off 1,900 pounds off that field on Verve stuff. And I say the reasoning being not that we all have to have Mother Nature in our corner. So we had enough moisture that was almost an irrigated type of scenario, but that root system within that faba bean, as those roots are breaking down, releasing that nitrogen that's tied up in those roots, it was almost like a slow release nitrogen throughout the year. So the crop just kept getting better and better and better, and it showed on the scales at the end of the day. So it's a profitable crop to grow. There is a little bit of issues that you can overcome. Plant breeding has got it to the point where the crop is only this tall now. The fiber market is slowly evolving, so we can have dual purpose and then actually tri-purpose, but with cannabinoid fiber and grain production is possible.
Thanks, Jeff. I really enjoyed that, and it reminded me of my days at Food Development Center and going to all the hemp conferences and tramping around the fields. But back then, we always used to keep track of what the the acreage, across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. And I remember it was growing, and then there was a drop off. So maybe you mentioned this and I just missed it, but what is the status now for the hemp acres and what's being grown?
Yeah, it's lower than what we would like for sure, and it's attributed to basically, I sold Freeloads granola yesterday that should have been sold at $10, sold for $19.75. Canola's at an all-time high, wheat's at an all-time high. It's extremely difficult. When you know that there are those issues, farmers have that comfort level of growing their conventional crops. So working as a diversification specialist for the province too, for Manitoba Ag, that was always my pet peeve, because this is the time that you should be trying to take a look at something to diversify your farm when your financial risk is not as high. And we just don't have that mindset. So we want to put every acre in to make every dollar, because who knows when it comes again. It's when prices are low and terrible, that's when people turn to different diversified crops, and it just increases the risk for everybody. So we're, it was tough to get acres. None of the producers, none of the processors, met their target as far as contracted acres. So there was a lot of skepticism within the farming community on contracts because of the drought last year, and they couldn't get out of contracts. So there's just a number of different things that have that effect on decision making.
And how do beans compare? I know it's small acres being grown. I was just wondering.
Yeah, but
like in terms of growth, but also what you get in terms of pricing.
Yeah, pricing is attractive too. So my faba bean crop, I grew same thing last year. I grew a 20 bushel an acre faba bean crop, which is horrible. Lost money, had to get crop insurance on it. This year, because of the rain, it loves moisture. It loves, north of 16 highway is a perfect growing area for faba beans. This year, on a breeder plot, small acres, but I pulled off 109 bushels off that crop, and trading right now for about 18 bucks a bushel. So risky as far as making sure that you get the rain, but it can be extremely profitable. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, have you seen the growth that you've anticipated for farmers growing more hemp, or do you see that in the future that will come, or is that already happening?
It's really been a roller coaster ride for him, to be quite honest. 1998, I was in this same building when a company called Consolidated Growers out of California came, and we grew 20,000 acres in 1999 in Manitoba, and none of that went for food products. It was a false narrative. There was no market for it at that period of time. It was all speculation. You get one of those years, and obviously the acreage drops to zero. So we've had overproduction, and now we're in a grain shortage throughout the world. So we anticipate acres will be on the rise again. The secondary thing that is moving forward is that hemp was brought into Canada more so for the fiber aspect and the fiber potential. Nobody really knew, first of all, couldn't even spell CBD. Back then we didn't know anything about the nutritional value or nutraceutical value. The nutritional value, thanks to Manitoba Harvest and the work that we're in the FTC put in exploiting that was great. So it's still, we still need sort of those we're at as far as on the marketing, we're at probably that 2 to 3% increase right now in the market. Again, just due to a number of different things throughout the world. But I still feel where I was going with this is that the fiber opportunity is becoming much more evident. And Alberta's taking a lead role in this right now. So a company called Inca is a partner of ours on variety or variety development. They're going to be they have basically biocomposites is huge right now too. So the goal of Toyota within 10 to 20 years is to have a car that's completely recyclable. That so door panels will have a certain amount of hemp in it. Whether it's batteries batteries can be made from hemp. Also, there's other products that can be made, but that movement is on. They've got contracts with Toyota, Tesla, as far as moving forward with products. So it's that secondary value that we can harvest the grain. It's not the textile industry that they're after, so it doesn't have to have the high quality, but for non-woven matting or biocomposites, it's huge. So you can have a dual purpose crop. It will be a bit more game changer.
Very cool. Okay, we're going to take a few minutes just to fill out our workbooks, have our conversation on the table before we bring the next speaker. And again, a reminder, Jeff will be on the panel later today, and so if you have questions, then please write those down. And yes,